Blake and I talked about it. He said, I had a data center on this from 2022 when I put this map together. We talked about whether or not he should have shown that to anybody.
Transparency is huge. The public deserves that transparency.
No doubt. AI is replacing that at such a rapid rate that they're firing off an email to 30,000 people and going, you're fired. And that's that. Hey everybody, welcome back to Take on the Lake with Lake Expo. I'm Nathan Bechtold. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we are talking about the topic that literally everyone at the lake is talking about. We are talking about data centers and opportunity zones. And I thought at some point, years down the road, I'm going to look back at a list of episodes and go, why in the world did I spend so many episodes talking about this one singular topic? And I don't know what my answer to that question is going to be at that time or what life will look like then. But certainly we have a concentration of episodes, and this probably won't be the last one, honestly. But I've got James Rericha on the show today. James, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. So, James, you are my second time visitor on the show.
Woohoo.
So that's something. You got second place. I don't know what that. Yeah.
Go for third, right?
Yeah. And James and I had a great conversation last time we were on and talked about, my goodness, a whole cornucopia of topics. And I thought for a variety of reasons, you would be someone that would be interesting to bring on because I think that you were good at wrestling with a lot of angles on things. I thought that you had a good future of the lake's development kind of mentality. You've actually run for county commissioner in the past. You didn't win, but no, I'm not
unfortunately twice.
Not to rub that in, but had a catchy tagline too, Rericha for America, which I will always remember. That was greatness. Yes. But genuinely involved in local politics, involved in local development, an entrepreneur. You own a string of veterinary clinics in the state. You drive a Tesla. I don't know, like various other. I just added that one in there because it's a nice Tesla.
I like technology. So
you like technology. Yeah. Okay, there you go. So I thought you would be an interesting person to bring on and have a dialogue about this because I think the most important thing that can be happening right now is conversation about this and not just scrolling kind of conversation. That's not conversation. Actually, scrolling is probably bad for your health really, and your mental health. Actually, I think it actually is bad for your mental health. So we're not scrolling here. We're actually talking. We're going to talk a little bit about the opportunity zone piece. We're going to talk about this proposed development that, again, was proposed 4 years ago at this point, but more details have come out about it in the flashpoint about the potential data center on it. Previously, my most recent episode, I interviewed Blake Hoditz, the would-be developer. I told him, you're not a developer because you've not actually developed anything. And he acknowledged that. He was like, I haven't developed anything. But the would-be developer of this property, and we talked through a lot of stuff about that. And you have some interesting points of connection to that. So I don't know if this is going to be a super linear conversation or not, but we're going to talk around and through all of those things. And I just want to hear your reflections on some of that stuff.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. You live very close to where this sort of proposed master planned development is happening, which, by the way, I do want to clarify. It's a 2,000 acre piece of property-ish, something around 2,000.
Massive.
Yeah. It's right at the intersection of Highway 54 and Highway 5, extends back behind Walmart and well back towards Lynn Creek Cove, has, I think, what did Blake say, a mile of shoreline along Lynn Creek Cove area through there. And if you look at the map, which we'll talk about it in a minute, this is not a 2,000 acres of a data center.
That's correct.
That was not ever the pitch at all. In fact, and one thing Blake and I talked about, he said, I had a data center on this from 2022 when I put this map together. He wasn't showing that to anybody. We talked about whether or not he should have shown that to anybody. And
transparency is huge.
Transparency is huge.
Developers, even our politicians, it looked like there was different conversations. The public deserves that transparency.
No doubt. No doubt. And then the other side of that coin is sometimes you put a map out of something you want to build and social media goes, never going to happen. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword. But agreed, transparency is huge. And so
I'll draw a line on that.
Yeah,
I think a developer has a right or need to keep certain things close to the vest. We've seen it with the recent development with the Fosters. They have to get permission from the tenants. We've got Bass Pro coming in. They've agreed to be announced, but others haven't. I think on the converse is we need our politicians to not sign NDAs. Anything that's shared with the politician needs to be open to the public, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay. Presumably, that's typically just part of the process in development of something like this. Is the signing of an NDA, is that pretty standard?
From a developer bringing in tenants, absolutely. Our partners, I've got other developments I can't talk about.
Yeah.
I'm a limited partner on. But we'll talk openly about some of mine today.
Okay, that'd be great. Better late than never, maybe. I don't know. But you put out this map as we're doing this. It was this week. Wow, it's been very, very wild last 8 to 10 days here at the lake. Yeah. But let's look at this for a second, because you're a tech guy, and my interview with Blake made it obvious that he's very much of a tech and systems guy. He loves designing systems. He did that with Salesforce for a while and worked on some major projects, problem solving and all this stuff. So as he talked about, we talked about the data center component, but there's a lot of other components on this map. So as he talked about them, it was clear that he viewed this as an integrated, he calls it master planned, miniature city. I don't know, it's not quite a city really, but a community kind of thing. Very integrated system. So I don't know, when you look at this, what's your impression of it?
I would concur with that. I would call it a master plan community. I think there's some benefits to that, in that you're considering many different land uses across a large parcel, so you get good separation. I see things like research park and industrial. I think in the past there was talks of a tech school. But even from my perspective, when I initially look at this, I'm like, that's additional jobs. We are often looking for people, other professional jobs in our area that are not necessarily tourism-based, so we can help attract, we talked about this last time, veterinarians to our business. Oftentimes they have highly educated spouses. They need similar careers along those same lines to come to our market.
So I've not seen anything like this proposed at the lake ever, to the extent of it literally has everything on this 2,000 acres. There's an industrial zone. There's a medical park. There's large box commercial. There's disc golf. I love me some disc golf.
I think there's an off-road park, is that correct? Or adventure park?
Adventure park, that probably is what that is. That lake up there at the top is like 100, he told me the acreage, it's over 100 acres. I forget how many acres lake. I think the idea there is there's a dam just extending across the top part of that image that would eventually feed into Lynn Creek Cove, and that lake would be stormwater, rainwater, whatever you call it, runoff. The 3D printed homes, we talked quite a bit about that. That was an interesting component there, and that he actually has an investor that's already on board for helping make that happen. They're like concrete, 3D printed concrete. I always think 3D printed, and I think plastic. You know, 'cause my friend that has a 3D printer prints cool plastic stuff. He printed some snow plows for my son's Crocs shoes one time. It's pretty hilarious. But so I think of that when I think of 3D printed stuff, but that's not, that term is such a broad term now that 3D printing means
concrete.
Yeah.
There's whole communities or subdivisions in Texas that are 3D printed concrete homes. There are metal 3D printing has drastically improved turbine engines for airplanes, for instance, turbine blades. So any medium you can think of, they're finding a way to 3D print.
I think that needs to be rebranded, honestly, because that just doesn't even have, the term 3D printing doesn't even mean what I think most people think it means anymore.
Like, I'm going to drag it over the term AI.
Okay.
AI is broad. I came here in a Tesla today. It drove me here. I got in the car. It already knew from my calendar I was going to a meeting with you. I hit go. I watched it. Didn't have to put my hand on the steering wheel once. Parked out front.
Does it yell at you if you look away from the?
Absolutely. You pick up your phone and it's yelling at you.
Because I thought somebody told me it drives and they work while they're.
I think that's BS, to be frank.
I've not ever sat in one, ever.
We'll go for rides.
Yeah. So I didn't really know some of the details.
But my point there is AI is training data like that. AI is used for the worst of things, deep fakes, videos that are confusing people. AI is used to look at molecules. Some form of AI is used to look at and understand diseases and molecules that were taking us years to understand. We're understanding them much faster. And so that has led to this massive investment in our U.S. economy and world economy into chip making. Nvidia is a company that's larger than all of the UK, basically, as far as the company, the value of the company is larger than the GDP of the UK. Yeah. And that's recent, but all of this is driving innovation, and I would call it AI is just the broad terms, like saying the Industrial Revolution is a broad term. I think AI will drive massive changes in our economy, in our world, and the way we work, similar to the Industrial Revolution, the dot-com bubble, post-World War II. All those things had major changes in our economy, and we have a chance to shape that, and that's good. But if we say we don't want, it's like when electricity came around in the 1900s, early 1900s, there was a fear of electricity coming into homes.
Sure.
We want to have the oil lamp, and it was not having knowledge, and safety certainly improved. There will be events where there's scary things, but I certainly enjoy having a hot shower and lights in my house, and it's very important.
Interesting. Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, that people talk about how America has been deindustrialized. That's been a large part of the whole Trump 2, especially. Trump 1 actually was about that a lot, but Trump 2, I think, at least during the election, that was a lot of the conversation.
Bring back manufacturing.
I don't know how much of that has actually happened, but that was on the national consciousness quite a bit, I think. And so the idea that America was once this great producer, I was listening or reading recently that the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century is very literally the thing that set America up to be the superpower of the 20th century. When America arrived in World War I and then especially in World War II, the reason we were so dominant is because we were the richest. I don't know that GDP-wise we were the richest yet, but we were the richest in terms of trajectory, infrastructure, direction, and production capacity in the world. And that a lot of what happened in the 19th century actually set the stage for that in the 20th century. So that's the history. I've been just thinking on these things a lot.
Last time, the World War II set us up with everybody else had a handicap. All the factories in Europe, the Far East, it had all been blown up. We didn't face any attacks on our homeland. And so we were set up with this head start. We're not in that same environment. These same things are being built in other countries that are competing against us. And we have, let's get away from data centers, chip manufacturing. Chip manufacturing is a very high-end manufacturing process. And you can look back at articles over the last 5 years now. We've got new facilities going in for Micron, Intel. All of this used to be concentrated really in Taiwan, which is this disputed territory that we will call a country, won't call a country. That's a lot of risk to us. We saw it during the shortages of COVID, the automotive shortages. Part of that was due to chips. There wasn't enough chips. Right. And so we're going to run into another shortage. I know you've built computers before. I purchased RAM that I bought just 2 years ago, and 2 years ago it was $200. This year it was $2,000. Oh. So we're going to see shortages in availability of some of these things. The value of them is going up. And it's partly because of what you can do with large language models, what you can do to help process data quicker. We're using it active in our business. We're not ready to describe anything we're doing there, but it will help us bring more of that local so we can kick some large vendors to the curb that are charging us huge fees, similar to Salesforce. They're charging us a monthly subscription. I have this wonderful tool that my local team can use to replace those tools instead of paying these big fees. It
feels like a revolution, really, from an I don't know if I would say from an industrial standpoint, but that kind of thing where you have these major, say, software companies and major service providers that are being hugely disrupted. As we're recording this, it was a week or two ago, it was tens of thousands of layoffs by certain companies because AI is replacing those jobs. Now, I've heard some commentary like, I don't know, some of those jobs those jobs shouldn't have existed anyways. Some swath of those jobs probably shouldn't have even existed. But a lot of them were people doing work that was meaningful and adding value. And now AI is replacing that at such a rapid rate that they're firing off an email to 30,000 people and going, "You're fired." And that's that. Yeah. So that is crazy. And I think maybe that, along with all kinds of other things that are happening, are part of a big thing that's happening in our country. And it's hard to mentally keep up with it. Even the way how we use our tools is shifting. The kinds of tools we use is shifting. If you're not using ChatGPT right now, I don't know what you're doing. But if you're only using ChatGPT right now, then you're behind in fact, you're not only using GPT right now. You just may not fully realize all the AI components that are already integrated into all the tools you use.
Go do a Google search. There's some stuff integrated. Yeah, everybody's putting it in their tools. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to draw that back to this development,
Right. That's what
AI is not going to replace the construction worker. It's not going to replace all of the jobs we have here locally. And this is a massive construction project. You're talking about adding lots of property-based value here in a development like this. We haven't talked about a TIF, which would be pulling that value back from our schools, our fire department. And so I see this as needed additional revenue. We'll go back to the hot topic, the data center. There's no housing, there's no kids there, but that building and the value of that property is going to be massive, significant. It's going to have both real estate value and personal property value, both of which are going to get taxed by all of our local agencies and bring in significant additional revenue to those agencies.
And I recognize that some people go, it's not worth. So people that are anti-data center, again, you will not change my mind. No amount of data will change my mind. I do not want these things. There are those people. I think that some folks should at least be willing to go, well, I'd listen to a conversation about it. If they're listening to this, then they are, right? But that point, I think, is really interesting for those who will hear it, which is they do promise to bring a massive amount of tax revenue into taxing districts, county, city, whatever, fire district, whatever, school district, without burdening it very much at all. The criticism about the data center, and again, we're not even going to talk about data centers the whole time, but on that piece, the criticism of those is, one criticism is they don't even create that many jobs compared to like how much square footage they take up or whatever. The upside of that is they don't really bring that many people into the schools and into the jails or like whatever else.
Road traffic.
Right, road traffic. So I'm just saying that is something to at least consider. You can still go, yeah, but I still don't want them. But I think it's disingenuous to refuse to acknowledge that would be a reality there, that it would bring millions into.
Over a 10-year period, I do believe it would be millions into the schools.
I honestly don't know. And I want to look at some comparisons on other ones. We were talking about one that you had pulled up.
Yeah.
Actually. The St. Louis data center, right?
Up in St. Louis, I think there was a study done that the data center up there would generate tax revenue of just over $400 million over 10 years, with over half of that going to schools in the St. Louis Public School District.
Now, I don't know if I trust the St. Louis Public School District to use that money wisely, but separate conversation.
We live here for a reason.
It would be the first time ever that more money has fixed a failing school district. Okay, that's not technically true, but generally that principle is throw more money and they continue to get worse. But the point there being, it is a huge revenue source potentially. And I don't know that one square footage wise. And again, it's not apples to oranges, but maybe it's not exactly apples to apples.
That's correct.
Apples to crab apples or something.
But the point is, it is an increase in the taxable base on both personal property and real property.
And again, man, that clip right there is going to get taken out of context by somebody to go, I knew it. I knew it. They were just trying to find a way to try to don't sell out or whatever. But I just want to go, you still don't have to like it.
Yeah.
But you should at least know all those things and then go, still not worth it.
Make an informed decision.
Yeah. That's my whole thing is I think in the conversation, you need to recognize all the stakes, negative and positive, and then decide which one outweighs the other.
Oh, there's valid reasons that we do need to protect our water, and we do need to ensure that our ratepayers electrically aren't affected. I live close to here. That would be one of my concerns. I live just across the road on Elm Tree. I think we covered that, but it's about 3,000 feet. I'm on the same electric system. I've got a well drilled because I'm not in the city. What would that do to my well? Those are good questions.
Those are great questions.
Fair questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've talked about some of those in a previous episode, and then which you haven't heard it yet because it hasn't come out, but my interview, by the time folks hear this, it will have come out with Blake Hoditz. People should go watch or listen to that because he actually talked quite a bit about those. And he was like, see this white line going across above the data center? That's a massive utilities corridor there that includes Summit natural gas line. And the design is that they would use a natural gas power generation station to generate the power. That's on, I guess, he said that's on Laclede. Are you on Laclede there?
This is I'm on Ameren across the street.
Oh, okay. So when he and I talked about this, he said actually, and maybe that's what he was saying.
I misspoke there. This is Laclede down in Lynn Creek. I have some property on Ameren.
Okay. So good. So
Laclede.
so this is Laclede. And he said Laclede has told him they will not power his data center.
Don't have the capacity.
Don't want it.
Don't want it.
Yeah, don't want to. And he said, so we're actually in a position where we literally have to power it a different way. So his point was simply, for folks that are on Laclede Power, Laclede's already said this is not going to affect you because we're not connecting to it. I'm like, okay, there's one concern that's been, I appreciate that, like being taken head on. And we talked about water and all this. And again, folks can go back and listen to those. But that to the point that those are all good questions.
But then if you bring generation in, which I hadn't heard of, you're going to bring additional jobs in to support that. That facility does require more jobs to keep those turbines running, up and running, powered, 24-hour service, additional tax base. We just talked about all those things you can't glean from this image, but continue to add to help our local services, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what else? Do you see anything else on this map that sparks your attention as we look through that?
I see housing and retail, and so this to me helps bring the community is growing. I have employees looking for housing. I see it all the time. We need more housing, and I see a decent amount of that in here. I see additional retail. All of those things, again, as a full community, I think these are good for our community. They bring in additional customers to my businesses. I think this is instead of somebody taking a small parcel out of this huge area and piecemeal one at a time doing something small, I like this master plan. I've seen it more in other communities. Lived in South Carolina for a period of time. That was a big part of what they did down there. And usually you end up with a better product because it's considering all of those things together. As far as I see all the industrial research data centers all isolated along the Highway 5 corridor.
The Highway corridor and the utilities corridor right there.
But then you get away from that and closer to the lake, you have the 3D printed homes, Midtown, which to me looks like maybe that's walkable streets with retail, and maybe there's housing above that and second, third story. You got horse stables, farmer market. There's a lot of green space on here still, which I like. So they haven't gone so crazy on density. And some of that's necessitated just by our topography here at the lake.
We talked about that too. He called it development on hard mode.
Yes. It's not like we're in Kansas and you're like, okay, get the bulldozer out. We're good to go.
Right.
Here we have lots of topography. And, there's nothing wrong with vacant land, but I think this is a great use. It's instead of pushing the city further out, it's up close to the major corridors. I think there's potential to help some of our traffic situation, and I would think there would need to be a traffic study done. I don't know if that's been done yet or not.
Yeah, and there are certainly, again, people who will go, I don't want anything like this at the lake because I don't want the lake to grow anymore.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I'm a big proponent of growth. I think it helps our community. I think when you get out of growth, you start running into the problems of you need to shrink services because you can't keep up. You got to constrain budgets. It gets painful when an entity, whether it be a community or a business, isn't growing. You're going the other direction, and that is much harder to do. It's much harder to reduce costs and stay confined. Growth like this, to me, means we have additional jobs, population growth. Kids that are in a community, they're not necessarily going to need to move away. That's what I thought about with the research park. Professional jobs. What if it was researching biomedical and kids went to school at Mizzou, came back here? I think it's excellent to broaden the base of our jobs in the area.
Yeah. It certainly seems like from the design and then also from what he and I spoke about that the education component even is a large part of what he wants to bake into the cake for this. Again, I think a lot of it feels very, if you look at it, it feels, wow, that looks too cool for anybody to actually do it. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn there, but bike trails, horse stables, farmer's market, adventure park, disc golf, farm. I was like, that's just empty land, right? And he goes, no, we have a plan to actually have a lot of agricultural activity down there in greenhouses and actually capture the CO2 from the natural gas plant and pump it into greenhouses to accelerate plant growth. And
That's pretty cool.
yeah, that's what I mean. He's a systems thinking guy. That became very clear. Again, these are really just things that are very thought through and not, I'm going to copy paste some graphical little rectangles on a survey map and throw it out there and see what people think. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. But you have a large piece of land as well. Is it adjacent to this or very close to it, right?
It does not border this, but it is in the opportunity zone, which the opportunity zone is defined since the 2.0 version is defined by a census tract.
It's a federal census tract.
Yep. It cannot be a smaller subsection of that. Opportunity 1.0 was abused in that way. And so this is the entire census tract.
Oh, okay. So Opportunity Zone 1.0, which was 16 or 17, when that was Trump won, they created those. And you're saying they would take a part of a census tract and make it into an opportunity zone.
And there's some reports on how that was abused over that time frame.
Okay. I heard that there were
misused.
some goods and bads during that time, and I didn't know specifics.
So this is defined as an entire census tract. It's not blighting. TIF requires blighting. We heard all about that with the amusement park.
Like the local government has to basically make a determination that this land has been blighted, ergo it is worthy of tax redirection, which is what a TIF is, where you redirect tax revenues that would have gone into various taxing districts' coffers, and it goes towards paying off infrastructure development costs of the thing.
Correct.
That's a TIF in 2 sentences.
Yes. And so the opportunity zone is the entire census tract. It's based on median family income or median household income for the area.
Okay.
And so that's based on the census data. This area does qualify. There are some modifiers that make this area even more advantageous if it is defined that because of the median household incomes in this specific census tract. Now, I'm not a census expert. I think the second homes, maybe the higher incomes, they don't get reported in there. And so this census tract qualifies. And so this is a federal reduction in capital gains tax.
Okay.
And there's some opportunities for step up in basis after the development. And so to me, I don't like the TIF. I'll be honest, I don't like the TIF on the outlet mall. I love that Bass Pro is coming. I just think the TIF supports the original seller's value and it at the cost of our public services.
Translate that.
So the seller can demand a higher price.
The seller,
The seller of the property.
So the person who bought the
owned
property.
them all before.
Oh, okay.
Before the Fosters.
Okay.
And that's oftentimes how these things go. There's been a lot of claims here they don't own it. I have no idea what
Not that I want to get in the weeds
their
about this. I just want to know
situation
what you meant by that.
but they need. If the property's too expensive to do the development and draw the company in, then the property's too expensive. But then you get this nice TIF on it.
Oh, I see.
The property's all
you
it's
can
worth so much
justify
more.
a higher price on selling
And so
the
the
property
seller
because
walks away
then
with a
the-
lot more money.
Okay,
That's my opinion.
That's an interesting point. Interesting.
And that's at the cost of our schools. It's worse, I think, as I remember Gail Griswold fighting the housing development on Nichols getting a TIF because
the
that's
apartment
bringing
complex.
a lot more families in. So my biggest point here is that Opportunity Zone 2.0 is not based on local. It's not pulling money out of local tax coffers. It's pulling it out of capital gains on the federal and IRS side. And so to me, it's a much better avenue to encourage development and development dollars to flow. And they're going to put these somewhere. This Opportunity Zone is going on all over the country.
Yeah. Missouri is going to get a bunch of them.
And they will. Missouri will get some.
Mm-hmm.
And we can either say, hey, we don't want those dollars flowing. And that's an opinion people can have. We don't want the lake to grow. We don't want those dollars here. But, man, it seems like we're willing to give out these dollars in TIFs and other arrangements. Why would we not consider an Opportunity Zone, which has nothing to do whether there's a data center there or not. It makes it easier to do all of this development, which does include a data center, but there's other guardrails that are being put in place. The county adopted an ordinance.
What do you think about that ordinance?
I think it's so strict that it is. If they could have done the same thing by saying it's a blanket ban. But I do think.
So you think it's essentially is a ban?
I would say that,
Okay.
yes. I have worked with.
A lot of people will be happy to hear that.
Yeah. The setbacks are so large that you.
Oh yeah, it's a mile. it's a mile off the or 6,000 feet off the lake, I think is what it was, and maybe I'm getting it vice versa. Yeah, and over 1,000 feet or something from any residential, if I'm remembering right.
I believe so. And then some of the language around even the way they define data centers. I have a server rack in my 12,000 square foot facility in Lynn Creek. We serve a couple of our own businesses all out of that system. So it's not just for the veterinary clinic. And we have power consumption that is above the threshold. So I'm technically in violation of the way that ordinance was written already.
Wow. Okay.
That's interesting.
Revealed yourself as a data center mogul here at the lake, dude.
And it's just one server rack.
Because you have a server rack that's doing a lot of work, basically, yeah. So back to briefly to the opportunity zone and TIF compare contrast, because I think that's really interesting. And are there reasons to oppose an opportunity zone that you can think of? Or I've heard some people oppose them. I've heard some people say that certain regulatory, like environmental regulatory requirements get waived. I haven't been able to find that. I'm not saying that's not true. I just don't, when I've looked around on that, I don't see any. Somebody said it's in the fine print on the big, beautiful bill. And I didn't, I mean, I don't know.
I have not seen any of that for decades. Republicans have run on removing red tape. So I wouldn't doubt there's something about reducing the red tape, because that's what they've run on for years. But I honestly have not come across anything to that. My objection would be is that it's still in the form like a TIF is. You're still giving a hand up to those who receive it, just like you are in a TIF to Johnny Morris. If that's what our economy has dictated is necessary to get development to happen, as long as we have it there, we should go after it, in my opinion. My objection would be more the national debt and what are we doing? So that's a whole different issue,
which isn't really going to be solved one way or the other.
If it exists and if it's going to go out, our community should take advantage of the rules that are there to take it in. And if there lies additional concerns about environment, I'm going to draw it right back because I think the concerns around the data center. If this data center wasn't in here, I think they'd be all for it. As you saw, several people change their position when they learned of the data center. If the data center isn't there, I think we would have had several jurisdictions saying, hey, we give you your letter of support, which is a vital part of getting higher on the selection list for the governor.
Yeah, if none of the local communities support it, the governor has a line of other ones that do.
That want it.
Yeah. No, you're right, though, to say that you're exactly right, because the city had already passed a resolution in support. The state rep Vernetti had already thrown his support behind it. And then the county, I don't know if the county was going to pass a resolution in support or not. I honestly don't know. But they certainly didn't once the data center component was revealed. And then the city revoked theirs, and then Jeff Vernetti revoked his. So you're right to say that the data center piece was the deal breaker for those people, and probably is true that for a lot of non-political, like just normal folks out there, that's probably the deal breaker. That maybe if that wasn't in there, they wouldn't have even known or cared. I would have been writing an article about an opportunity zone that no one would have read, because that sounds really boring.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, I think our community can use other mechanisms. There is a draft of additions to the planning and zoning code for Camden County from the citizen working group. So there's nothing to sunshine because it's not made it to any kind of recommendation or made it into the hands of the county.
There's just a group of citizens working on some revisions to the land use code?
Yeah. And we've been working on it for a couple of years.
Wait, you're part of that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to name them. We've got Chris Franken, Stacy Shore, myself, John Beckett. And there's been revisions that we've taken to clean up portions of the residential zoning code. We've been working through the whole code.
Yeah, I've talked to Stacy about that in the past. How long has that group been working on those kinds of things? Years?
Yeah. Years.
Okay, so that's the same conversation that I've had with some of those folks previously about mainly that the way planning and zoning was initially implemented in Camden County was not ideal. Copy and paste from another county kind of thing. Yeah, and that led to all these instances that we've seen where a business is like, I'm in a residential zone, or I'm technically commercial, but I own this tip of the point that's residential and is landlocked by commercial. And what are we doing here? Nobody wants that. I'm thinking of one case in particular that will not be named, but these kinds of things have happened a lot. And yeah, I knew that there was a group that was working on making that actually fit the lake X unique characteristics better. So that group's working on
an addendum to address data centers.
okay.
So we have the ordinance in the county, and this is an addendum to address data centers as part of P&Z. It would have similar aspects to what you've seen in the ordinance, but it also has additional pieces that are required for P&Z. And there's definitely conversation back and forth, but it's a great mechanism to, if we want to ensure that they aren't connecting to our power grid, that they aren't discharging any kind of wastewater or industrial wastewater processes into our subsurface or into our streams, we can do all of that in there. And so my point would be, like, we should regulate the data center through the ordinance and through the P&Z, both in the city and at the county, so that we can get back to the stance that the opportunity zone is a good investment vehicle for the other 90% of this development here. Because I certainly would, if there's no data center, I would still love to see the rest of this development happen. It would be great for our area.
Interesting. We should have led with that, by the way. James Rericha, inside the secret group working to overhaul how land gets used in Camden County. That's the headline. I'm just a little sensationalist. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I kid. But I think that's good that there's folks that are looking at
And we all have different opinions.
how that's all set up and wrestling with like how to improve that. And I think you're probably right. If there's the regulation of, in other words, saying a data center cannot extract X amount of water per day or month or whatever out of the
aquifer.
That feels like something that probably could be written into that.
It is in the draft, yes.
Okay. And probably power usage. I don't know if that's part of it. Because the way zoning works is we already have all these parameters for industrial and commercial. And if you want to fall asleep quickly at night, you can read some of these on what the rules are.
We do it for fun.
Yeah. On what the rules are for how an industrial 1 or a commercial 2 or like all the specs on what they can do, what they can't do, what a violation consists of, that kind of thing, generally. That's already there in the county. The county sort of short-circuited that and to pass the ordinance they did now over a week ago and just passed a county ordinance. Is that the right way of describing it? In other words,
it's a timing issue.
They didn't modify the land use code. They just tell me if I'm saying that incorrectly.
The land use code does not cover the entire county, so the ordinance does have a purpose.
Right.
In addition to that, the ordinance is a quicker action because there is drafts and lively debate, and we have to take these drafts to commission meetings and have them heard by the public so they have a point to offer their own input. So I don't set any of that schedule. We've just been asked to provide some drafts, and we'll present those when we're asked to present them.
Okay. Yeah, I think I said short-circuited. That's probably not the right term. I meant just short-cutted. That's not really a word either. But you did a faster method of going, hey, we're not going to wait for this to come from that group and modify the land use code. We're going to pass an ordinance that applies to the entire county right now. Yeah. Did you guys, with what you're working on, did they go to you for that or no? Where did they get that ordinance language? Do you know?
I was not a part in drafting that one.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know.
Don't know who was part of it. Okay. I actually don't either. We could ask. Maybe we should ask. So talk to me about the area that you have. Is it to the north of this proposed development here? And it's in what would have been the opportunity zone. It's in the same census tract, yeah?
That's correct.
Okay. So you have a vested interest in that becoming an opportunity zone.
Yes.
I'm not saying you're biased. Yes, I am. We all are, right? In our own various aspects. But like you actually have an interest because you're like, I own this thing and I'd like to develop an area north of that. And I would like for it to be an opportunity zone because that would make that more developable.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
It's a housing development. It was started in 2004. It's been sitting there. We've done a lot to work through the steps nice and slow, acquiring all the land that was originally there, acquiring the original developers' rights. All this happened over almost the last decade.
There were no iPhones in 2004.
How do we get the map out when we're out there on the property or on X? And so pulling all this together, but the property is nearly 200 acres. already has water and sewer on property, has buried power. This thing was set up to be a subdivision, and we'd like to continue that. We'd like to add additional housing, and an opportunity zone would allow us to attract investors who want that capital gains tax credit.
So do you think there's any chance of it becoming an opportunity zone now? Is it too late? Ship sailed?
I think there's still time, but I think you've got to draw the hard line between the data center and the opportunity zone to have the comfort of the public.
And you can't carve off even Blake's 2,000 acre piece he wants to buy.
No.
You can't. You have to. The whole thing would have to be that whole census tract would have to be approved as an opportunity zone. You can't go, oh, we're afraid he's going to put a data center here, so we're not going to approve that part. Which, by the way, again, separately in his interview, he told me data centers do not care about opportunity zones. He was like, that's not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he said that's not. It doesn't matter. They're building data centers in places where there are or not or whatever. It's not a deal breaker to get a data center there one way or the other, having it as an opportunity zone.
And that's my problem, is that these issues have been married together, and they're not married. They don't need to be, and I think we're eschewing a lot of other good development that someone would be coming and asking for a TIF for, but we have this other option of an opportunity zone.
Now what?
Good question.
Yeah. There's been a lot of passion and fervor about this issue. It is always amazing to see how something that no one was talking about, not nobody, okay, but not many people were talking about, all of a sudden, literally everyone is talking about it. Literally everyone. I was at church last night, and that's all anybody wanted to talk about was this. And mostly what those folks had was questions. What is this? What is this not? Am I going to die of cancer if I live next to a data center? Like all the questions, right? And when something like that happens at such a rapid pace, information is a crazy thing because things get absorbed as factual that aren't. I had even one person telling me that she thought data centers caused cancer. Now I said, I'm not saying that's impossible. I've not seen that. And like, where are you seeing that? And she said, I don't know. I think I saw it somewhere. And that was the extent of it. And I'm like, okay, I'd like a little more than that. Again, I'm not discounting any potential thing like that, but I think that's what often ends up happening is so many words flow and so much scrolling happens and so much stuff gets thrown around and flies around, and fact with speculation, with emotion, all of them just marry in this thing. And I don't know, I hope that this conversation helps bring some amount of clarity to some people about what's happening, what's not, what could happen. Any other things that you think that we've missed touching on? You brought some stuff about opportunity zones. Are there some other things that you think people ought to know about any of that stuff?
I think we've touched on it. It does require the support of our communities, and so we probably would be shut out if we don't have the support. I value everybody's opinion to not want to be near a data center. I can tell you, living 3,000 foot from this, if this were to ever be built, it wouldn't bother me. I have 4 kids. From the research I've done, as long as they've done the appropriate measures to protect the resources that we have here. And I think that can be done through zoning or through county ordinance or even city ordinance, because this may be inside the city here.
Interesting. Thanks for coming on and talking about this. There's probably more words to be spilled one way or the other.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a little fearful when there's such this momentum to have a dissenting opinion, but I think it's important to have dialogue. So that's what we're trying to do.
I agree. That's what I want to do. And so I appreciate, you being willing to come on and talk about it in a way that's measured and kind of looks at the whole thing. And again, I hope that's constructive, honestly, and instructive for people. And again, people are welcome to form their opinion, and they're welcome to not like a thing regardless of,
absolutely,
for whatever reason, they can not like a thing. But I like bringing some of this stuff forward and talking to people that know more about some of these things. Again, that's even on a group that's working to rewrite the land use code that would potentially even regulate something like this. That helps me because I'm not there in that room, and you are, and you get the feedback and talk to people about it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it, man. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, hope this, like every episode, has been helpful, informative, and if it has been, please share it with other folks. Again, this is a really important topic. I'm not saying I'm saying all the important things about this topic, but I'm trying to have people that know way more than I do about it on the show so we can grapple with these things. And honestly, so that we can see the community that I live in and that we love thrive and prosper and grow in the ways that it needs to grow. Thanks again. Appreciate all the support. Press on, everybody. Stay anchored, stay curious. We'll see you soon.